Inside the cave, both divers were trapped. Debris had fallen on the exit path. The visibility was so low that they couldn't even see their own hands properly. And now, both of them had only a few minutes of oxygen left. Meanwhile, one diver went back to find an alternate route, and the other stayed near the debris. 5 minutes later, when he returned, what he saw was a truly unbelievable sight. Welcome back once again to GenTV's videos. Viewers, cave diving is different from normal scuba diving. In scuba, people normally go into open water where if a problem occurs, a single push can bring the diver straight to the surface. But in cave diving, there are cave rocks above and on the sides, and there is just one narrow path. If the oxygen runs out, the equipment fails, or you forget the direction, consider it game over. Cave diving is the only sport with an extraordinarily high casualty rate. In swimming, there are 1.77 deaths per 100,000. Similarly, base jumping has 43 casualties, and cave diving 138 per 100,000 participants. Every year, 25 to 30 divers die in this sport worldwide. And this number is small because there are very few people who do cave diving. Sherlock Springs in Florida is like a maze where some tunnels are dead ends, and some lead directly to death. The cave's depth is 80 to 120 feet. The water temperature is always 22 degrees Celsius, and the visibility is normally crystal clear. November 17, 1991. A pleasant, sunlit morning on the water. Some professional cave divers from the WKPP or Woodville Karst Plane Project were on a mission. Their goal was to explore new cave passages and map them. Among those divers were two new divers, Bill and Parker. They were both friends, and a passion for adventure possessed them. For them, this wasn't just a dive, but a chance to break their limits and set a new record. But little did they know that this journey was about to become the biggest test of their lives. When most people hear the name Sherlock Springs, they imagine a small pond because from the surface, it just looks like a round spring of 56 meters. Its depth is only 9 meters, but the real story is hidden beneath it. A limestone cave system that is up to 91 meters deep. The tunnels, chambers, and inner passages make a person feel like they are in another world. This cave is part of the Wikala cave system, which is considered one of the largest underwater cave networks in the world. Starting from the entrance is a narrow passage called the Scars Restriction Zone. It is so tight that only one diver can pass through at a time, and also so narrow that a diver's shoulders and tank scrape against the rock while passing through. But as soon as this zone ends, a magnificent view opens up, exactly like a highway tunnel built under the sea. This place is both beautiful and dangerous. On that day, the WKPP team divided the divers into 4 groups for their mission. Everyone had different responsibilities so that not a single mistake could be made. The very first group was the one that stayed on the surface near the cave entrance. Their job was to monitor the entire mission, note the time, and respond immediately in case of an emergency. This team was acting as a safety line on the surface. The second group consisted of the divers who had to place the decompression tanks in the correct spots. These cylinders were hung in places where the divers could get extra oxygen to breathe on their way back. This task was the backbone of the mission because no diver could return alive without decompression stops. The third group was responsible for the line and safety checks. They would fix the guideline properly, provide extra backup, and ensure that the team going ahead had a clear and safe path. And the fourth team was the explorers, that is, Bill and Parker's team, who were actually supposed to explore the cave. Around 10 a.m., the entire team entered the water. Bill and Parker checked their scooters and tanks, said a small prayer, and entered the depths of the cave. 20 meters down, they met George, who was part of the decompression team. A little further on, they reached the Scars Restriction Zone. Adjusting their buoyancy, they continued forward with the help of their scooters. Soon, they arrived in a large chamber named Wakala. The scene was so magnificent, it was as if a person was swimming in the open sky. Within 40 minutes, they reached the Grand Canyon Fork and, as planned, they descended. The tunnel was narrow, but the scooters were working fine. After a 25-minute struggle, they reached the lower Wakala room, from where they found a way to go up. Everything that had happened up to this point was completely normal. They felt very free even inside the narrow cave. At this point, seeing the oxygen level getting low, both of them decided to return. But little did they know that their freedom was perhaps limited to this point. When they returned to the Grand Canyon turn, the tunnel had completely changed. Silt had spread in the water. The visibility was so low that the divers couldn't even see their own hands. The Grand Canyon was nothing like they had left it a few minutes ago. This was a warning sign that both Bill and Parker could feel very well. Finding the way forward was difficult. Holding on to the guideline, they kept moving forward because they felt they just had to go a little further and the S-car's restriction zone would arrive. But soon, they realized that the path ahead was blocked. A pile of silt had blocked the way up, and the guideline was also buried in the same debris. At this moment, their oxygen tank was about to run out, and seeing this, both of them started to panic. Bill signaled to Parker and wrote on his slate, "Stay here, I'll go check the line." He went back to the turn to confirm that they weren't on the wrong path. But upon confirming with the line marker, he found out that this was the way to the exit. Bill quickly came back to tell Parker, but when he returned just 5 minutes later, he saw that Parker was not there. In the dark cave, Bill was now terrified. He looked around with his torches, but there was no trace of Parker in the cloud of silt. Then he noticed a slight flow of water from the pile of silt. He thought that maybe Parker had squeezed through from there to the other side. But there was no more time to think because the oxygen level was about to run out. He started digging through the silt himself. Every second felt as if death was approaching him. The section of silt was only 2 meters long, but for Bill, it became a journey of miles. Finally, he managed to make space and get inside. The tunnel was now turning upwards. Bill saw a regulator hanging from the guideline, but he ignored it because his own oxygen was running out. He held his breath and kept moving. Finally, he reached the decompression station at a depth of 30 meters and took a deep breath from an oxygen bottle. He thought that everything would be okay now, but then he noticed Parker's oxygen bottle, which was hanging completely untouched. It meant Parker hadn't come here. If Parker wasn't near the debris and the pile of silt, and he didn't come up either, then where on earth did he go? Bill's heart was now broken. He started to feel that his friend might not be alive anymore. Then decompression team member George came down. Bill wrote on a slate to tell him Parker was probably dead. Upon which, George tried to bring Bill up. But Bill was in such shock that he didn't want to go back up without Parker. George went back up, brought other divers, and then they forcibly took Bill to the surface. Parker's absence put everyone outside the cave in a state of shock. The divers went back into the cave to look, but there was no trace of him at the spot where he disappeared. They only found his regulator and cylinder, which were lying separately. The next morning, Parker's body was found in the upper part of the cave, which revealed that he had abandoned his gear and was only wearing a wetsuit.